Frustrated residents say they come out at night and have been known to chew through wires.
And the city has gotten involved, but the problem persists.
New York City took a drastic turn in its war against rats, releasing millions of high-tech rodent killers into streets, parks, and subway tunnels. At first, it seemed like the city had finally gained control, but soon strange patterns began to appear. The rats didn't just fight back, they learned, changed, and spread in ways no one could predict. What started as a simple extermination exploded into a shocking chain of events that would haunt New York forever. Join us as we uncover the story of how New York's biggest extermination plan turned the city's underworld into a battleground. The rise of the rat rage. New York City's long fight against the brown rat had begun many years ago, stretching back over 200 years. The animal, known to scientists as Rattus norvegicus, did not come from America at all. It found its way to the New World during the busy trading years of the 1700s. Ships arriving from Europe carried them unknowingly, hiding inside barrels of food or deep within the wooden holds packed with cargo. When those ships reached Lower Manhattan, the rats stepped off into a city that was still young but growing fast. By the start of the 1800s, New York's population had already climbed past 200,000. People crowded into tenement houses and narrow streets, and the rats found endless places to move into. They crept through damp basements, slipped around the slaughterhouses near the docks, and burrowed through piles of refuse that gathered near the East River. The city beneath the surface, its cellars, drains, and trash heaps grew into one large network that suited the creatures. They bred quickly, feeding on scraps that people threw away, and soon they became as common as the cobblestones that lined the streets. As the city kept growing, so did the problem. In the late 1800s, New York began to dig out great underground tunnels for its first large sewer systems. These new tunnels, made from brick and mortar, were built to carry both stormwater and household waste, but they also gave the rats a safe and permanent home. By the 1880s, these passageways stretched beneath nearly every block of Lower Manhattan. The rats used them to spread, turning the city's underbelly into a hidden world of movement. During that time, men like Colonel George Waring tried to take charge of the growing mess. He led the city's Department of Street Cleaning in the 1990s, when reformers were beginning to push for cleaner living conditions. He understood that open garbage piles and unsealed ash barrels were feeding not only rats but disease as well. He dressed his workers in white uniforms and sent horse-drawn sweepers through the streets to clear waste. It was a bold plan, and for a short while, the streets looked better. But the problem beneath them did not go away. No matter how much the city cleaned up, rats kept finding their way back. The garbage kept piling up faster than anyone could haul it off. As the 20th century began, immigration and industry brought millions more people into the city. By the time the population passed 3 million, rats had dug themselves firmly into New York's daily life. They lived in its walls, under its sidewalks, and between its buildings. People learned to live with them, even though they never stopped trying to drive them out. By the 1940s, the rat issue had become so large that city officials began to treat it as a public health emergency. The Department of Health started mapping where infestations were more. Inspectors walked through neighborhoods, marking down old housing blocks, broken trash systems, and food markets that attracted pests. In 1949, with the help of federal programs under President Truman, the city launched its first official rat control campaigns. For the first time, experts studied how the animals moved and multiplied, hoping to find a way to break their cycle. But even then, progress came slowly. Later reports showed that the efforts failed because one key issue stayed the same: garbage. Every single day, New York produced mountains of organic waste. Trash cans made of metal stood on sidewalks for long hours before collection, their lids missing or loose. Food waste spilled out, attracting rats from every corner. They had enough to eat and enough places to breed. After the war, new construction spread across the city. The skyline rose higher each year as new apartments were built, yet those same buildings also gave rats fresh shelter. The New York City Housing Authority built massive public housing projects during the 1950s and 1960s to give homes to working families. But inside their basements and under their pipes, rats found warmth and protection. They ran along utility lines and hid behind the walls, using the infrastructure to spread from one block to another. By the late 1960s, the city had formed a rat indexing unit within the Department of Health to measure how serious the infestations had become. Officials walked through basements and alleyways, keeping count of burrows and droppings. Some reports showed that in certain housing developments, nearly 1 out of every 3 basements showed clear signs of rat activity. The creatures were not just a nuisance anymore. They had become a part of the city's living structure, surviving on the waste that humans left behind. Then came the 1970s, when New York faced a deep financial crisis. The government slashed budgets everywhere, and both sanitation and pest control suffered. Garbage collection slowed down, leaving heaps of trash to build up on street corners. With less oversight, rats moved in larger numbers, digging into walls and drains. In many low-income neighborhoods, waste stayed uncollected for days, giving the rats more food and space to multiply. Through all those years, New York struggled to keep up with a battle it never fully won. Every reform brought short relief before the old problem returned. The city grew, but underneath the development, an older world remained. One built from tunnels, basements, and shadows where the brown rat continued to thrive. The fight went on from one century to the next, showing how the smallest creatures could outlast every change, every plan, and every generation that tried to drive them away. But there had to be a solution. The modern rat crisis. By the start of the 1980s, rats had already worked their way into that picture, appearing in movies, newspapers, and street stories as creatures that showed how far the city had slipped in, caring for its corners. Even as the decades turned, the rats never lost their place. When the 21st century arrived, New York began to rise again. Skyscrapers reached higher, businesses grew fast, and tourists poured in to see the dream that never slept. Still, the rats stayed on, building their own version of survival in the city's shadows. For a long time, their presence was spoken about but never measured. People saw them, complained about them, but few had real numbers to show how deep the problem ran. Then, in 2014, a Columbia University researcher decided to find out. He used data from 311 complaints, housing records, and sanitation files to build a clear picture. The study revealed that about 2 million rats lived among the people of New York, roughly 1 for every 4 humans. Neighborhoods in the Bronx, parts of Upper Manhattan, and places like Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn showed the worst clusters. These areas had just the right mix for rats to thrive: old buildings, heaps of trash, and tight housing that left no space between food and shelter. By 2022, the city's official helpline had logged over 26,000 rat sightings, a huge rise from previous years. That sharp climb proved what many already felt, that the rodents were not going away. Experts soon linked this surge to the way life had changed during the pandemic. When lockdowns closed offices, cafes, and restaurants, the city's usual piles of food waste disappeared. The rats that once fed on those scraps had to move out and look for new spots. Many ended up around homes, digging through household trash and fighting for food in new territories. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention even warned that rodents across the country were acting in unusual, aggressive ways as their normal sources vanished. At the same time, health officials started noticing another concern. Reports of leptospirosis, a bacterial infection spread through rat urine, began to rise. From 2021 to 2023, nearly 50 confirmed cases were recorded in the city. The year 2023 alone saw 24 cases, the highest count ever. These infections often appeared in the same places where rat sightings were heaviest. It was clear that where rats multiplied, so did the risks they brought. Looking back through time, it seemed that every chapter of New York's growth had unintentionally fed the rat population. New York produces more than 12,000 tons of household trash every single day. The Department of Sanitation explained that much of this waste, especially leftover food, often lies within reach of rodents before pickup. If the garbage sits out even for a short while, rats gather fast. Recent estimates suggest that they occupy nearly all neighborhoods below 125th Street and most areas close to major train lines in the outer boroughs. Public transport has not escaped the problem either. A 2021 review by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority found that over one-third of subway stations had signs of infestations. The findings led to new pest control plans, improved waste storage systems, and design changes aimed at cutting off access points for rodents. The city tried to clean up its tracks, seal holes, and keep bins closed longer. But the rats kept adapting, using tunnels, drains, and even cable ducts to move around. Science offered another angle to the mystery. In 2017, researchers at Fordham University collected and studied rat DNA from across the city. Their work revealed something remarkable. Rats living downtown were genetically different from those uptown. It meant that these creatures rarely crossed paths between areas, forming small, tight communities shaped by streets and subway lines. The discovery showed that the city's rodent population mirrored its human one in strange ways, separate groups living side by side. In the end, the story of New York's rats turned out to be more than a tale of pests. It became a reflection of how people and creatures share space in a city that never truly stops growing. The rats have built their survival around human habits, around the leftovers, the forgotten corners, the late-night garbage bags. The struggle between the city and its most stubborn residents continues, each adapting to the other in a continuous cycle that defines the layers of New York itself. Rodent mitigation strategy. For decades, New York City tried one fix after another to deal with the rat invasion. But by 2023, that struggle reached a point where change could no longer wait. Years of half measures and broken coordination had allowed the problem to grow out of hand. The city's image began to suffer, and every borough showed signs of frustration. Under growing pressure, the city's leadership finally decided to pull every scattered effort together and build a single plan that could tackle the crisis from the ground up. The move came with the creation of a new command center known as the Office of Rodent Mitigation. It became the heart of New York's new plan to get rid of rats and restore some order to its streets. The head of this operation stood Kathleen Carity, an expert who had spent years studying city ecosystems and pest behavior. She was placed in charge of uniting what had long been a tangled mess of departments and duties. For the first time, one person had complete control over every part of rodent control, from street cleaning to housing inspections. Before this change, different departments worked alone, often without sharing data or following one another's progress. The Department of Health inspected buildings and reported infestations, while the Department of Sanitation picked up waste and managed city trash. The Parks Department looked after green spaces, and the Housing Department handled building code issues. The lack of coordination allowed rats to spread faster than the city could respond. Even when one agency made progress, another fell behind, undoing the effort. When Carity took charge, she brought all those departments under one structure, connecting their work through the Mayor's Office of Citywide Operations. This office began collecting shared data from sanitation, housing, and health teams to find out where rats were breeding and how fast they were spreading. With new digital maps, the city could finally see patterns that had been invisible for years. For the first time, rodent management was treated like an ecological system, not just a cleanup problem. That new approach turned information into a powerful tool. From this system grew one of the largest efforts in city history, a campaign called Get Stuff Clean. It began in late 2022, but expanded quickly under Carity's leadership. The goal was to focus on the areas most overrun by rats, more than 1,000 locations across all 5 boroughs. Places like Harlem, Chinatown, Bushwick, Inwood, and parts of the Bronx became priority zones. In these crowded locations, old buildings, cracked sidewalks, and exposed trash created perfect breeding spaces. Cleaning crews were sent out day after day to remove piles of garbage and scrape away years of buildup. Waste pickups doubled and sanitation teams hauled off over 1,000 tons of debris in only a few months. Housing inspectors and cleaning crews worked side by side, closing up wall gaps and fixing leaks while removing trash outside. The cooperation between these teams marked a new way forward. The city also brought back a long-delayed reform known as the Trash Containerization Program, which forced buildings to keep their garbage sealed inside rat-proof bins instead of plastic bags left on the sidewalks. This change had been discussed for decades, but it always ran into pushback from property owners worried about space and cost. In July 2023, the city finally made it mandatory. Every small residential building with up to 9 units had to start using solid bins with tight lids. Larger complexes and businesses were given until early 2024 to follow. It was a simple rule with a deep purpose. By keeping trash sealed away, the city hoped to break the chain of feeding and breeding that had kept rat numbers high. City officials viewed the shift as one of the biggest updates to waste management in modern New York. Along with that, the schedule for setting out trash changed. In the past, buildings could place garbage outside as early as 4 in the afternoon, leaving it exposed for the entire night. The new policy pushed that time back to 6 in the evening for bins and 8 for bags. This shorter window drastically reduced how long rats could scavenge before collection trucks arrived. Within a few months, data showed fewer rats running around in the early hours, especially in pilot areas like Hell's Kitchen and Fordham. The timing change might have looked minor, but it turned into one of the city's most effective tools. By cutting down feeding hours, the rat population started to lose ground. Alongside this, stricter rules were added to the housing maintenance code. Landlords who ignored infestations or handled trash carelessly faced fines that could reach up to $2,000. Health inspectors carried out over 150,000 checks in 2023, a jump from the years before. Instead of waiting for complaints, teams went out to look for signs of infestation before they grew worse. Yet enforcement alone was not enough. The city opened more Rat Academy workshops, free programs that showed landlords, janitors, and residents how to seal entry points, store food safely, and keep buildings in better condition. These sessions helped residents understand that rat control was a personal responsibility. Public involvement became a key piece of the campaign. Officials wanted people to see rat control as part of their daily routine, not just a government task. Posters appeared in subway stations, and short online videos encouraged residents to keep garbage covered and report any infestations they spotted. The message was simple. Everyone had to take part if the city wanted to turn things around. Neighborhoods that joined cleanup drives and stuck with new waste rules started to see fewer rats in their streets and courtyards. It was a move toward a cleaner, stronger, and more united New York. Technology takes over. New York's modern fight against rats began to rely more on technology than old extermination habits. The city turned to digital tools to track, map, and respond to infestations with far greater accuracy. At the center of this change stood an online platform that had once been simple, but was now rebuilt into something more powerful. It showed where rodents were most active, where waste problems started, and how the cleanup process was moving along. This allowed everyone to see what was happening right on their block. By 2023, this upgraded system began to change the rhythm of how rodent work was done. Anyone could check if their street had open violations or if cleanup crews were already on the move. The same system helped agencies plan which areas needed more attention, reducing wasted effort and guesswork. The most focused work took shape inside new rat mitigation zones, known as RMZs. These zones were like small laboratories spread across the city, testing new ideas and building cleaner environments through steady and organized action. Within those affected neighborhoods, city teams increased garbage pickups, checked buildings more often, and tried new tools that aimed to stop infestations before they spread. Instead of using heavy poison, workers began to rely on safer and smarter methods. Carbon monoxide systems were placed into burrows underground to suffocate rats quickly and safely. Dry ice became another useful method, sealing off holes with carbon dioxide that displaced oxygen, ending colonies without harming the soil or nearby water. Both of these tools had already been used with success in other American cities before coming to New York. From those results, New York drew lessons and added another layer of innovation. Smart bait stations, designed in Italy, started to appear in select areas. These machines used food scents to draw in rats instead of chemicals. Once a rat entered, it was ended in a liquid chamber, and the system recorded the event automatically. Every trap kept digital notes of what it caught, sending that data to a central dashboard watched by the city's technology office. These devices, tested first in Bedford-Stuyvesant and East Harlem, became symbols of the city's new approach. The machines were linked to real-time monitors, showing technicians exactly where rodent activity was rising or falling. Field data by the end of 2023 showed that these new stations reduced manual labor by nearly a third, while catching more rats than traditional traps ever had. Reports collected the following year reveal just how much difference this shift made. Complaints from residents in focus zones dropped sharply within the first 12 months. In East Harlem alone, sightings fell from thousands to less than half that figure. Waste rule compliance rose too, as residents learned that how they stored their garbage directly affected infestations. Cleaner streets and stronger data went hand in hand, creating visible improvement. The city backed these results with serious funding. More than $3 million went into targeted mitigation, and nearly $2 million more supported staffing and high-tech upgrades. Alongside the budget came new laws requiring city departments to share their data openly instead of working alone. This change ended years of disjointed record-keeping and allowed the city to act faster. A group of new specialists was brought in, trained to use sensors, mapping tools, and artificial intelligence to read trends from the data collected each day. This created a rhythm of ongoing learning instead of one-time cleanups. The entire process began to resemble engineering rather than extermination. Experts from universities and urban health institutes took note of this shift. They saw a city finally treating rodent control as a system problem rather than a pest issue. It became about redesigning how neighborhoods handled waste, water, and construction. Researchers observed that prevention had replaced poison as the core strategy. This change gave New York a new image in global discussions about urban pest management. Other cities began watching closely, eager to borrow its methods. By the end of 2024, more zones were added across the city. Washington Heights, Bushwick, and Flushing joined the list, extending the pilot network. Each new zone served as another testing ground, helping the city learn what combinations of technology and daily habits worked best. The effort also revealed how much the city's infrastructure mattered. Collecting more than 10,000 tons of household trash every day kept pressure on sanitation systems. Many buildings lacked proper space for bins, forcing people to leave bags on the curb, which became easy food sources. That long-standing challenge reminded officials that true success would come only when the city's waste system caught up with its technology. Still, these zones gave planners valuable insight. Data showed exactly where behavior, enforcement, and technology aligned to produce lasting results. The process became a loop: test, measure, adjust, and test again, until each improvement became part of daily operations. The city finally recorded a steady drop in sightings across all boroughs for the first time in years. The decrease was not dramatic, but it marked real progress. It showed that constant coordination, supported by data and community effort, could begin to turn the tide. Behind every improvement stood hundreds of small decisions: better bin designs, faster pickups, cleaner basements, and smarter tools, feeding live information back into the system. The city's long fight against rats was still far from over, yet for the first time, it began to look like a sustainable effort rather than a temporary campaign. The evolution: New York City's long struggle with rats has turned into one of the most advanced and organized efforts to manage public health and the urban environment. What once started as a never-ending war of extermination has slowly changed into a broad, data-based movement that brings science, community action, and city planning together. The new idea was that rats are not just a pest problem, they are a reflection of how a city is built, how it manages waste, and how its residents live. By focusing on prevention instead of destruction, the city has learned to deal with the roots of the issue rather than just its symptoms. The Department of Health and Mental Hygiene now leads this large operation, working hand in hand with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Together, they keep an eye on both people's health and the city's environmental conditions. One of the main dangers they watch for is leptospirosis, a bacterial infection that spreads through rat urine. While the numbers were still small, they revealed that the risk was growing and that the city needed to take deeper preventive steps before more people got sick. Between 2021 and 2023, the city gathered more than 2,000 water and surface samples from sewers, parks, and waste sites. These samples were tested for signs of the bacteria. When the test results were combined with complaint data from the Rat Information Portal, a public online map, officials were able to build predictive models showing where infestations were likely to rise. This gave the city a new kind of early warning system that could detect risks before they spread. Every confirmed case of infection now triggers an immediate response. Sanitation workers move into nearby blocks, clean up trash piles, and check for burrows. Pest control teams inspect walls, alleys, and basements for entry points. This connected network, linking hospitals, pest experts, and laboratories, has helped the city act fast and stay ahead of outbreaks. It shows a shift in mindset. The goal is no longer to wipe out rats through poison alone, but to prevent them from thriving in the first place. One of the most successful parts of this approach is the Community Rat Academy. Started in 2017, this free training program teaches residents, building superintendents, and property owners how to block rat entryways, manage trash properly, and keep yards or basements from turning into breeding grounds. By 2023, more than 5,000 people had completed the program and become certified community monitors. They now work as local eyes on the ground, checking buildings, marking risk zones, and sending reports to the city. These trained volunteers have become a crucial part of the rat control system. Their work adds to what inspectors already do, and their local knowledge often helps city agencies focus their attention where it is needed most. The city gives them checklists, access to inspection tools, and direct contact with sanitation officers. This education-based model has helped neighborhoods take charge of their surroundings. Fewer people now rely on exterminators and more focus on long-term structural and behavioral changes that make infestations harder to start. Grassroots groups have also stepped in to help build this new system from the ground up. Organizations like We Love Bed-Stuy, East Harlem 360, and the Bronx Community Cleanup Coalition organize regular cleanups and trash drives in areas that have long struggled with waste buildup. They fill gaps in maintenance and bring together residents who take pride in improving their streets. The city's Adopt-A-Basket program allows citizens to co-manage sealed litter bins, and by the end of 2023, over 1,200 bins were being looked after this way. This growing collaboration between citizens and city workers has changed how people see sanitation. Clean streets are now seen as everyone's job, not just the government's. When residents pick up waste, cover cracks, and report burrows, they help stop infestations before they begin. The Department of Parks and Recreation has taken these lessons into the city's green areas, where rats once found easy shelter. In 2023, the Central Park Conservancy completed a GPS mapping survey that uncovered more than 1,100 rats' burrows hidden under soil and plants. Crews filled these burrows, compacted the soil, and trimmed vegetation to remove hiding spots. In Prospect Park, Brooklyn, volunteers collected nearly 50 tons of litter in a single year. Parks in Queens and the Bronx added new waste bins with stainless steel mesh and used soil compaction methods to block new burrows from forming. Each of these actions reduced rat nesting opportunities and made the parks more resistant to future infestations. This environmental approach is now part of the city's larger integrated pest management strategy, which focuses on designing spaces that naturally discourage rats from settling in. Instead of depending on poison, the plan promotes non-lethal deterrents like peppermint oil sprays or ultrasonic devices that drive rats away. Community gardens have joined the effort by managing compost carefully and storing food waste in sealed containers. Technology has become another major weapon in the city's plan. With $3.5 million in funding, New York has brought in AI-powered cameras, contraceptive baits, and smart waste bins that prevent rats from accessing food scraps. These innovations help predict where rats will appear and stop them from multiplying. Between 2022 and 2024, proactive inspections increased by 65%, while rat complaints dropped by 14% overall. In targeted areas, the reduction reached more than half. Humane traps and controlled euthanasia devices now work alongside sanitation crews, creating a more balanced way to reduce rat numbers. City engineers have redesigned alleyways, waste storage zones, and even building foundations to close off potential nesting spaces. Every part of the system connects to push the rat population down and keep it there. The fight no longer relies on fear or extermination, but on planning, persistence, and shared responsibility that keeps the city moving forward. One block, one neighborhood, one generation at a time. What are your thoughts on this new approach and how technology has helped improve the system? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.